So you chose the path of criminal activity, whether that be a gangster, a drug dealer, a robber, stick-up boy, what have you. That's the path you chose. And then you get busted. You have co-defendants. The cops want them also, and you're offered a snitch agreement. What do you do now? I'll tell you what I did, and I'll tell you what most do, and I'll weigh in and elaborate on this issue. Hello, welcome to Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you like this video, please push like, share it with your family, friends, neighbors, enemies, etc. One day ago, in 1997, it is August the 12th. Today is August the 13th. This is also a special day. It's not lost on me, but I won't go there. August the 12th, 1997, I was arrested for conspiracy charges. Federal, local, state, you name it. Postal Service actually led the case. And I was busted. In my case, I'm going to be very clear, and I have been since I've had this channel. My actual drug connections were not your typical drug connections. They were females that I grew up with, who then had connections, whatever that may be. Okay, so they were just girls. One in particular was the head of them, but they were people that I grew up with who weren't even drug dealers. They knew that I was dealing drugs in a different state, knew they could make a profit, and chose to mail packages to me, okay? So I want to make it very clear that I was not dealing with actual drug dealers. You know, these were people who just went and got drugs, packaged them up, and sent them. They purchased them from drug dealers. Like I said, there's one in particular, and I'll name her. Her name was Alyssa, okay? I've known her and all the people involved in my case since childhood. And when I say childhood, I mean grammar school, junior high, high school. These girls were friends with my ex-wife at the time, who I had a very close relationship with. In majority of the cases, all it was is these girls or the girl picking up drugs from somebody, and then a bunch of girls, 5, chose to mail packages out this way from California, out Arkansas, and a couple surrounding places for $500 a package. That's what they got. Okay, so they're actually lining up to do so. Now, I didn't understand conspiracy laws, and I was wide open. So I would go home, go back to California, and I'd go to a bar or wherever I was. Everybody knew what I was doing. I had people calling me outside of these group of girls, guys, people that heard in bars that I was selling pounds for $20,000 out here, and they're picking them up for $3,000 to $5,000 max out there. They were like actively trying to send me drugs, okay? So then I get busted. And when I got busted, there was never at any point at that time, I'll get into it, the thought of me telling on these girls. One, my ex-wife was involved, who had my children. Another one, these girls had kids that were friends with my children, even though they were little. The oldest one was 9. And there was no way in my life that I was going to ever be the one to cooperate against people that I grew up with, that lived in my hometown, and live with that it just wasn't going to happen. So it wasn't even a thought. Now, had they been drug dealers, I'm going to give an example. There's a case where I know guy is a good friend of mine. Okay, actually one of my connections before, and comes to find out later that this guy had previously busted people in the past. So in that case, would I or anybody that was dealing with him had known that and got busted, would they then have turned on him? I don't know why not at that point. Again, I am not from a culture of don't snitch. I am from a culture of don't tattle. There was no guns in my background. There was no violence over drugs in my background. I always made jokes and said I was a friendly neighborhood drug dealer, which is not, as my little cute way of making it sound like it was innocent, I guess. But in that situation, things could have been different. Okay? So, I knew that I was facing mandatory life sentence early on. Okay? I knew that. I was told that. There was a part of me that didn't believe it because in Arkansas, when I got busted, I was facing 1040 to life, and you end up doing a year off 3. There's all kinds of different things that can happen. So when you hear 1040 to life in state prison and guys that are getting 40 years are doing 10, it's a whole different, you don't really believe it, okay? When the feds came in on me, and at the last minute, and they offered me, a police officer offered me 2 years to snitch after cussing him out and everything else, it wasn't even on my radar, okay? That's not something I was gonna do. If I had to, and I knew that I was facing mandatory minimum life, that means I could not have even pled guilty once indicted. The magistrate made that clear. I would have got life if I didn't cooperate, okay? And I was good with that. Now, why was I good with that? Looking back on my life, I think that there's been, you can make an argument even for today, that I have never valued life properly, or maybe even some sort of death wish. I really do. I remember I really did not believe I was going to make 30 years old. And that's not because of drugs. It's just I had this thing set, and maybe it came out of the punk rock era where live fast, die young, that belief system that we had. You do it while you're young, because when you get old, it's going to be shitty. And there was a part of me that never thought I'd make it past 30. And of course, we can talk about other issues in my life, suicidal tendencies, kind of, what's the proper word? Glamorization of suicide or something. There's other issues that I've had in my life, all right? There's nothing more to say other than that right now. But going back to the heart of this story and the whole snitch deal, I see over and over again, and I've talked about this a lot on this show, and what I find over and over again is the leaders of all these organizations are the biggest rats. Pablo Escobar gave up Carlos Leder. Carlos Leder then gets sentenced to life, asks Pablo for permission to go ahead and tell, cooperates against Noriega and others. Big drug trafficker, snitches, mob bosses, high-ranking mob officials, biker leaders. We can go on and through history. The biggest rats end up being the people that run everything. Look at Chapo and Chapitos, or whatever they call them. The little Chapitos, all rats. Now, criminal organizations and, let's say, inner city gangs and stuff, totally different. On the street level, when you're talking about especially urban areas, don't snitch. Even those guys are actually snitching. And what it comes down to is it's something you have to look at inside and really decide for yourself, is it worth it or not? And then I ask, and then I look and say this. Well, let me put it this way. There was a guy did a video about this. John, I can't think of his last name right now. Big trafficker, marijuana trafficker out of Florida starting in the 70s. One day he came to me at Lewisburg and said, would you unalive somebody to get out of prison? And I'm like, what? If staff or the government or somebody told you can go whack that person, would you do it if you know you're going to go home? And I'm like, absolutely. I already did some slashings at that point in my life. And then he said, what's the difference in telling on somebody? What he actually wanted me to do, he had somebody on the street, and it was very popular at the time. This is in 2004, 2005, where you can get somebody on the street to go make drug bust for you, and you can get time off your sentence. And he was actually wanting me to get involved with him and have somebody that I know go to Jamaica and do a big pot run where he had inside to bust these people, okay? He had it already set up. Of course, I didn't do it. But when you look at it that way, look at these people that are in criminal organizations that are killers. What's the difference between telling on somebody and unaliving them? Pride, ego, right? Stuff like that. Yet, there's an old saying that law enforcement likes to say. What was it? Oh, there's those that didn't tell and those that wish they did. You know what? I've talked to a lot of drug dealers with life sentences. I'm from an era where we had thousands of people for nonviolent drug conspiracies in federal prison. A lot have been let out now. And I can name 10 open conversations, say, fuck yes, I'd tell if I had a chance to do it over again. I never said that. And again, it goes back to the fact that I didn't have drug dealers. These were people that I grew up with, and there were girls, and my kids were hanging around with them and all everything else. And you know what? Come to find out, let me say this about Alyssa Cruz, I'll even name her. I held water with no problem. And then I found out later in discovery, she gave up the most fucking information on me. She trashed me. I used to write home. I was trying to get affidavits from people on a newly discovered evidence petition that I had and seeking help from some of these people. And she would never answer me. Everybody who I saved, by the way, turned their back on me. No letters. My ex-wife told me I couldn't have contact with my kids till I'm 18. Then when I got out of prison, played my friend and then shit on me in different levels. But that's a different story. I look back on my situation, and I used to say all the time that I'm glad I didn't tell. And I still hold to that right now. I'll get into that in a second. That my life is better today because I didn't. Well, I said that when I came out of prison, and I had a lot going for me before I bit the dust and screwed my life up. Okay? The truth of the matter is, there's no telling what would have happened if I did. I wouldn't have got hurt. That's a fact. And I'm not sitting here regretting it. I'm opining and saying what I feel and breaking down the truth about informants in prison. Let's look at these mob rats. Let's look at this guy. There's this guy named Jimmy Calandra, Sammy the Bull, all these other guys. The thing I always had against these people, I've always said that I'm not a snitch hater, okay? I can talk shit because I didn't and all that stuff, but I've always been consistent on saying I don't have a problem with government informants. I have a problem that the guys use it, shit on all their friends and everything, and then they get out and continue in criminal activity. That's the problem I really have. And that's what happened, because the snitch game is just that. There's a misinterpretation that law enforcement are out to cut the heads off the snake, to cripple the organizations. That's not necessarily true, man. They're about quotas, numbers, and statistics. 1997, before I got busted, there was an officer who became the sheriff of this county who came to me for a terroristic threatening on my landlord. They did a parole sweep in my house. They found a joint, a package of rolling papers. The joint carried 5 years. The rolling papers, paraphernalia at the time, carried 3 to 10. And I was on probation, and I had a suspended sentence. And he said, what are we going to do to keep Robert from going to prison? And I was like, lock me up. And then he said, I have a different attitude. It's about numbers and quotas. They have to meet their quotas. That's all it was about. And better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I was known as somebody nonviolent, no guns, no violence over stuff. They wanted me to do actually reversals. That's the proposition they threw at me. I can deal drugs. I can get all the drugs I want. I can deal, but I got to give them numbers. I got to give them bust. They actually wanted me to start a pawn shop. Stolen property, you get all that. They wanted me to do that. By the way, beware of pawn shop owners out there. Beware of gang leaders. I've said a lot about mob guys, okay? I know for a fact there's people's in powerful positions in biker organizations that were rats in prison. Not on the street, in prison, which gets to the next point. Do you know how many guys with life sentences go to prison and become rats in prison? I always use Joey Testa as the whipping boy for this because he was the most prolific institutional informer that I've ever seen. Dry snitching, openly snitching, the most prolific. Yet, he didn't tell on his case, which always seemed really, really weird to me. I can tell you things that somebody I cared about deeply, Carmine Persico, did that wouldn't align with being solid in prison, but I'm not doing that, okay? I'm just saying there are situations. I have, in one case, when I was a gang leader, told staff not to let somebody out of the hole because it was going to cause problems for my gang, which is snitching in prison, by the way. And that was like the worst thing I did as a gang leader, man. And I felt like a big rat doing that. But I confided in one of my bros about it. And he's the one that brought it up and said, dude, we're going to lose everything if so-and-so comes out. Just tell him not to let him out. I'm just like, my actual words was when they said, hey, this guy named Boogie. Boogie's coming out, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be okay. And I said, I can't. My words were, it wasn't don't let him out. It was like, I can't be responsible for him or something like that, which is the same thing as saying don't let somebody out. If you are in a leader, if staff comes to you in prison and you are asked, can so-and-so come out of the compound? You always say yes. You never let somebody sit in the hole. You deal with it and you get out. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I didn't do. So in that case, I snitched in prison. Go ahead. Throw out your comments. I've talked about this for years. I've been open about this for years. And I have told staff as a white rep in Terre Haute at certain times, move so-and-so out of this cell, there's going to be a problem. That's snitching, technically, okay? So, the game of snitching and cooperating and telling is just that. It's a game. It is a moral choice, or is it? People talk about loyalty in criminal life and gang life and biker life and mob life, street gang life. You're loyal until you're not. The loyalty is usually a false sense of loyalty. And I know that there's people that'll buck on this. I know there's people that'll just go batshit crazy me saying this, but I'm here to tell the truth about it. And the truth is, I know a lot of lifers in prison that wish they could have snitched. I'm not advocating for people to snitch. I'm not whatsoever. I am not here. I'm here to just speak honestly about this issue. And it comes up over and over again. I watched the Carlos Ledier interview, Ledier, whatever you say, interview. He just did an interview with this guy on YouTube, just phenomenal. Ratted, had no qualms about it. Talked about Pablo snitching. He had no qualms about it. El Chapo can snitch. Everybody snitches, but then you got this don't snitch culture, which it's all such bullshit. And again, I am not telling people that they should snitch. I am telling you that I knew so many guys with drug sentences that had life drug sentences that said they wish they would have. Numerous people. Fucking idiot. I remember Tommy Rutledge was in my say, oh, look, I'm standing up in the mirror. I'm a stand-up guy. And look, I'm standing up and getting old. He'd make things. And you go, I'm a fucking idiot. I should have told on everybody. Everybody told on me. Those are kind of talks. Now, 4.5 years after I was sentenced and lost my direct appeal and my 2255, which is basically like a second and last appeal at the time, I was offered 14 years to tell against my ex-wife and Alyssa Cruz. Alyssa had already given up information at that time. I lost sleep over that. But I would have did it out of anger, out of them turning their back on me, out of my ex-wife getting remarried and then having the kids call dude dad, from what I was hearing, and then telling me I can't contact them until they're 18. So there's bitterness in me. Yet I could never pull the trigger and do it. You know, it was just something in me. I couldn't have done it. Looking back now, I don't wish that it's not like I wish that I would have. I don't know what my life would have been like because when I got out of prison, I anticipated my life being totally different. And I never saw the addiction angle as it did coming. I never did. I'm just here to tell people that are involved in criminal life that that whole stop snitching thing is a bunch of bullshit. And again, I'm not advocating. I'm not advocating for snitches. And to those that don't, and be a man and go through it, God bless you, you know. I know that I wasted 24 years of my life for being a stand-up guy. And again, I can go back in my head and I can say, well, what if I did this? Would my life been this? Blah, 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 blah. I can do all that all day, but I didn't. So it's a waste of time. As a prison person who started out thinking I was going to do prison consultant, when I got out and started a little bit, whatever, I would never tell people that they should snitch, but I would always present them with government statistics on it. And it was really about 8 and 10 tell, you know? So I'd always lay it out that way. And then lay out the fact that most people in prison are not hurt that are snitches. And I'd also say to all of you, maybe even the guys in prison are going to watch this, the person who cries about snitches and hates snitches the most, I despise snitches. Why? What do you mean? Because they put you in here? No, the person who says that really is the biggest snitch almost every time. So watch out for the guy who screams the loudest. It's like the Republican senator who's the family values guy is usually is getting BF'd by somebody, by a dude, you know. Zimmerman, that Zimmerman law. I think that's what happened with that. You can look at the pasture, the big pastors that are preaching the word of the Lord, have a couple girlfriends or dudes or whatever. Tucker or Baker. Remember Baker back in the day? Church leaders, these people that really want to help children, pedophiles. It's the same thing when it comes to the whole snitching thing. If they're really just snitches, usually they're a snitch. So it's a big mess. Again, I wanted to say it, not advocating, just putting out the facts. If you're dealing drugs right now, just know that the leaders of those cartels are big snitches. Not everyone, but let's look over and over again. Let's look over and over again. Just look. So the inner city gangs, the stop snitching culture, okay, you don't want to tell, your family might get hurt. I get all that. Those people, they're all being lied to. They're all being lied to. And 9 times out of 10, the government who are busting you are actually letting the drugs come through for economic purposes. So it's all this big shitty fucking game. And caught in the middle is this stop snitching culture, which, okay, I get and can applaud people that actually have the moral compass in them, if I will. I don't know if that's the right term, to say no. Just say no to law enforcement. I get it. And by the way, law enforcement really do respect people that don't tell. They do. At the same time, how do you respect law enforcement, DEA and stuff, that actually allow drugs to come into our country? Because that's what they did, and still are to a larger scale, I do believe. Thought for the day. Take care.